Welcome, Riddy, to Parasocial, the people behind the protocols. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. You have such an incredible background. I'd love to kick us off with you telling us a little bit more about yourself, your background, and your role at Core Protocol. I'm very excited for today's episode.
Yeah, sure. My name is Ritti. I'm the CEO of Core Protocol. And a little bit of background of myself. I've been uh, a producer slash DJ for more than 10 years, primarily house music. It's my favorite genre. Um, about 2 years ago, I signed with Live Nation with one of their electronic imprints. And as well as that, I also do content creation as well, because nowadays, as an artist, you have to do your own content, right? Especially if you want to build your brand. I've been doing that across, of course, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and I've had more than 40 million impressions in total. Um, and so I have a lot of experience about, what it takes to grow as an artist, to try and be discovered, to build your brand. And that's something that we're going to be helping artists with through Core by building a clearinghouse for creators and creative assets.
Amazing. I actually didn't realize your genre was house music, so that is super exciting. We actually have some lightning questions at the end, so I'll be sure to ask you a little bit more about that. Um, on Core, you mentioned a little bit about Core being a clearinghouse. What does that mean in practice for artists today?
Yeah, absolutely. So at a high level, Core is a creative asset clearinghouse for the AI economy. And the reason why we're building Core is because if you take a look at the landscape today with AI, it's collapsed the cost of creation to almost zero. So nowadays, anyone can create, studio grade professional content, whether that's music or film, right? And so that's created the largest gap that we've ever seen between supply and demand of talent. Um, so, for example, on the supply side, what we're seeing now is an influx of content that's flooding the market. But then the demand side is harder than ever now for like labels or agencies or brands to actually discover the right talent to represent them. So there's zero infrastructure that bridges these two sides together. And so we're going to fill that gap by creating a clearinghouse which routes talents to the right labels and brands.
And I I'm definitely not as advanced of a producer or artist as you are, but I
Mhm.
have dabbled in a little bit of Ableton in the side.
Okay.
In terms of content, when you mentioned content is there's kind of an influx of content this today. Does that
Yeah.
mean content in terms of like what is being uploaded to SoundCloud? Are you referring to like sampling libraries and there just being like an
Mm.
influx of sounds? Is it more the generative aspect with something like Suno and people taking that and uploading it? Where are you seeing content kind of get aggregated in the market?
Absolutely. So when we define a creative asset, we're talking about things like music catalogs, as you mentioned, like, films, licensed tracks and remixes, digital artwork, even talent profiles as well, right? And this, you can find these assets, upon a myriad of different social media platforms and applications, but they're all disconnected, which is the issue. And so now within this AI economy, the oversaturation of content has just made it harder than ever for these brands and labels to actually discover the right talent. And so, what I'm really excited to talk about more in this chat are the applications that we've built to enable and help content creators and artists with that.
One thing that might be a gap in my knowledge, but I think would also be helpful for the listeners here is what does the traditional process look like of labels finding content and artists today sans AI? And what is this kind of influx of AI content led to in terms of the problems that exist that you're seeing with core with label producers or artists kind of finding the right support? What does that look like the contrast between like pre AI and post AI?
Yeah, I mean, we're in, the music industry and the entertainment industry as a whole is still pre-AI. And what I mean by that is the infrastructure that's currently running in these industries is very antiquated and outdated and slow. And so, an A&R, right, who works for a record label, right, the way that they would discover talent typically is just through manually, swiping on Instagram, right, or TikTok, or through a mutual friend
Like
or connection.
trending sounds. Oh wow. Mm.
So it's a very long and arduous process. It's not efficient at all. And then let's say once you discover that talent, right? There's a lot of back and forth, a lot of contracts, a lot of middlemen involved as well. So it's just overall really inefficient and slow. And so that's why we haven't seen a clearinghouse for creative assets like this yet, because the infrastructure just hasn't existed for talent to be routed to the right brands and labels at an incredible scale. And now with AI, right, it's harder than ever, and it's really showed the loopholes and the kind of the flaws that the current infrastructure has.
Got it. That makes sense. I actually didn't realize the traditional way of discovering artists was just kind of swiping through TikTok and like looking through trending sounds. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and even if they're not swiping through TikTok or Instagram, right, they're usually receiving hundreds and hundreds of emails per day from different artists who are looking to submit a label, submit a track to the label, right? But these people, they don't have time to sift through all of these emails, right? So once again, it's super inefficient.
Wow. Got it. So like the process of creating content and music has now been AI enabled, but the process of routing this content that's being created to the right records and producers is still pretty antiquated. And so that's kind of the, am I understanding that correctly? Like
Yep,
that's the,
exactly.
okay, that KOR is bridging. Very cool. Wow, that's amazing. One question that you, or one theme that you alluded to in the chat just now is KOR has already started building products. Can you give us a quick preview into what the product suite looks like today and who these products are for currently?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 5 products that are live in our protocol. And these applications I'm really passionate about because they genuinely empower, artists and creators to help, kickstart their brands, their careers, and provide the intelligence they need to succeed. So, to give you an example, one of our applications is called Pacer. It's an AI operating system for artists, and essentially, what this application does is that it pulls all of the data that you need in one place. It gives you an action plan for what you should do when it comes to releasing your next track, distribution on social media, right? Your content calendar. And so because of this landscape we're in now, where there's just so much competition, right? As an artist, you need to be your own social media manager. You need to be your own, marketing manager, right? You need to be your own,
Yeah.
everything, right? It's just so much
A lot of
to
stuff.
digest. There's a lot of things you have to handle, right? And actually, it takes you away from the thing that you were passionate about in the first place, which is just making music or making content, right? And so with Pacer, what normally takes about 50 hours, right, of management per week, we compress that, in less than an hour through AI native workflows, right? And so far, we've actually piloted this to several large record labels, including, if you're familiar with, Black Book Records and Catch and Release Records from Chris Lake and Fisher. They're like some of the biggest
Top house
top DJs.
artists of all
Yeah,
time.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. Because Circuit Group, which is um, the label management company that helps manage and operate these labels, right? They're one of our advisors. So we've received a lot of interest already from Pacer, which is great to see. And actually, if you check our socials, especially on Instagram, there's a lot of big DJs that already follow Pacer, like MK, Paul Woodford.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
who
I'll have to
else?
check
Yeah,
that out.
we've received a lot of like support from the like overall producer and artist community, which has been really great. Uh,
Because I've heard from artist friends that if you don't have a management team or a
yeah,
manager, this all this admin all of a sudden becomes your problem. Is that true that like the manager is like the kind of arbiter of all this
absolutely.
admin? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very true. Like even personally speaking, right? Because I still, produce music and I'm running my own socials, right? And that takes a lot of time. So it's a huge struggle. It's kind of it really puts a lot of artists off from wanting to pursue a career or wanting to, grow their brands just because of the amount of work and labor it takes.
Mhm.
So Pacer fixes that and is essentially a full marketing team within one app. And then a couple of other apps which are also super useful and I'm really excited about are Streamline. So this is an AI intelligence platform for content creators. So if you use the Streamline, the application will monitor the millions of accounts across social media, like TikTok, for example. Track what's trending, tell you why your videos performed well, right? And then from there, give you an action plan as well. And so both Streamline and Pacer, they provide a lot of intelligence and data that you would not be able to get from other applications that are available in the market. And then Chorus. So Chorus is an ethical AI music remixing platform, similar to Suno, right? As we all know, like AI generative, music has been, booming and trending as of late, and so there's a clear demand for it. But the issue with that is that it's not, Suno is not really ethical, right? Like all of the music that they train on, they trained on without consent and without providing any sort of royalties, right?
Oh,
So
without the royalties. Yes, that makes sense. I didn't realize
yeah,
the consent thing. I didn't realize that was a factor to the training piece.
yeah, no. I remember there was I can't remember. It was like a couple. I think it was like earlier this year. Someone uploaded like Spotify's entire library of music on I think online that people could just download. And so think about like that's just so much training data for companies like Suno to train on, right? And to um, improve their models. And so that's something out of our control. But what's in your control is actually being able to empower artists to ethically, right, license their music so that their fans can actually remix their music, right? And then in turn, they get royalties, right, for every time one of their fans, right, or even a new user, right, discovers their music and wants to legally remix their tracks by purchasing their remix packs, which is what you can do on Chorus. And we're
Is it,
really, yeah,
would you, I'm so sorry, this conversation
no,
is
no,
very interesting to me, so I've been interrupting a little bit, but would you say chorus is similar to like, I'm forgetting, the name is slipping me, but there's software that you can use for like sampling libraries. Is it similar to that where there's kind of a provenance for how samples are created and licensed to people that are using them? Is that a good way to think about chorus?
Yeah, similar. So the way that you can remix a track on Chorus is that once you, for example, purchase a remix pack, they contain stems, different stems
Sure.
that were used, within the original track, right? So, for example, like a vocal stem, and then the drums, the synths, right? All the other different musical elements, and then from there you can choose to remix, swap, and in and out the, different stems, or add your own stems, right, to create a completely, original remix, right? But it's ethical and you're actually supporting the artist.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Are those
And then I was just
really
going to
good?
say, we have Chorus, and then we also have a couple of applications as well, like versions. So this application essentially can take, your song, right, and just create a myriad of platform organized, optimized, sorry, content. So for example, if you're targeting TikTok or targeting Instagram, versions will create content that's optimized for those platforms and distribute them for you. Because, distribution right now is the moat. And so, especially if you're a one-man band, right, and you just don't have the capacity to, distribute your content and your music, then that's significantly going to help. And then Core Hubs is similar to like a Patreon in the sense that you can directly, monetize with your audience by, for example, selling courses or subscriptions. And so it's helping kind of bridge that gap really between your community and what you're building and providing.
Very cool. I actually didn't know about core hubs or versions, so I'm excited to try that out for myself with some of my side mixing. But one other piece of the core roadmap that I've been following is core ID.
Hmm.
Why was that so important to build and launch? And why was identity kind of a key piece of the protocol?
Yeah, so Core ID was important for us because we wanted an ID in which enables you to access, right, our entire ecosystem, and especially, an identification in which all of your on-chain activity, right, whether it's when you're purchasing a remix pack, right, or you're actually, licensing your own music, that can all be tracked and tied to your Core ID. And this will be launched very soon. We've already received more than 200,000 signups for the waitlist already, which has been amazing to see. And yeah, you can expect some news about that very soon. It will be available to mint on Base, and there'll be some. Yeah, it will look very nice and personalized as well. So look forward to that.
Amazing. Um, Thinking about this ecosystem of products that you're building out as part of Core, why was it important to build Core as a protocol instead of a centralized business running on a database?
Yeah, for many reasons. I mean, firstly, yeah, Core is a middleware layer, not a blockchain. And so all of our applications like Chorus, Pacer, Streamline, and any future apps, right, that are wanting to build on Core, they sit on top of our engine, right? And so another right fundamental reason is obviously we are built on Base and we're leveraging their agentic payment infrastructure, which is an essential part for our clearinghouse to actually function. And so that's why we're not a chain. And I think the relationship is very mutually beneficial in the way that we can help onboard a lot of users from our institutional partners onto Base, and from there actually leverage their infrastructure, right, to make this clearinghouse function.
Makes complete sense. And it makes sense that composability is such a big piece of all of the different applications that you're building and this kind of system that you're starting from, like identity first. Um, you hinted at this a little bit with some of your early partners for Pacer, but can you give us a real example of Core kind of living up to the promise, or kind of an early case study where you've seen Core or one of the products built on Core kind of function as intended for some of these users you were talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can give a great example. For example, with Chorus, right? The Chorus application really demonstrates the full, flow end to end. So let's say you're an artist and you want to release a stem pack, right? You can release it on Chorus. Your fans can access that pack and they can pay for it in, USDC, right? From there, a portion of those fees go, to the artist as royalties, right, which are automatically distributed on Base via X402. And then from there, right, if you're the user, you can interact and start remixing your favorite artist's music. You can mint those on chain, and then you can also in turn, right, support your favorite artist. And to give a great example, we helped Mousetrap, which is Dead Mouse's record label. They had released their remix packs for their roster on Chorus. And within 2 days, they had earned more than $35,000 in revenue, which is actually the equivalent of like more than 7 million streams on Spotify, which is very hard to attain.
Oh my
And it's very
goodness.
long as well.
I did not realize that was the ratio.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that actually streaming revenue as an artist is very low. It's actually not where the majority of artists get their revenue from. The majority of artists, they get their revenue from shows, performing, even radio, right? They monetize much better than streams because Spotify also takes a huge chunk of the revenue you get. And then those royalties, they don't come to you in months or sometimes even years because you have to actually reach a threshold per year or per quarter in order to actually receive those royalties. But with X402, now every royalty can be distributed and settled instantly.
Wow. And there's also so many kind of case studies and stories, like I think of like Taylor Swift's like original albums where it's just so hard as the artist to own your own music and also monetize off of it efficiently. It
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense that agentic payments and X402 is being leveraged in this use case. One thing I picked up also is your commitment to build on Base. Base has obviously been in the news cycle a lot recently, given Robinhood chain and tokenized stocks
Mm.
and all these things, and their kind of shift to payments. Why Base? What was so exciting about the Base ecosystem? Curious about that.
Yeah. So the reason we chose Base, there's several fundamental reasons. I'd say, firstly, in terms of their mission and their values, they are onboarding the next billion users to crypto. And that's also what we're doing through our institutional partners as they enter, the Base ecosystem. I would say, first and foremost, the tech is very important to us. And that's why we chose Base as our home. You know, as I mentioned before, X402 and, Base MCP, these are requirements for our clearinghouse engine. X402 is essentially like a payment gateway for agents to transact in seconds. And so when you think about all of our applications as a whole and the services they provide, agents, they can access mini services via X402. For example, let's say you wanted to search for a song or a remix pack, right? That's available on Chorus. You wanted to check, the ownership or the history of the stems, or you even wanted to, generate a preview of the track, right? All of these actions, they would actually be too cheap to be, put behind a credit card, right? Through traditional payment rails. And so we've made that doable now with agentic payments. And so that, yeah, I would say overall the tech is fundamental, which is why we chose Base, and also their values as well. We are a Base native project, and we're helping them also, scale their user base as well.
That makes complete sense. You also spoke to institutional partners. Can you explain to me what the kind of landscape of partnerships look like for the core protocol today? I understand there's producers and artists that you're kind of working on attracting to the apps that are being built on core, but yeah, what does that kind of overall roster look like of like how you're thinking about partners and institutions specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. We formed partnerships with some of the biggest IPs, artists across music and television. So to give you an example of some of them, Black Mirror, as you may know, is one of the most watched shows on Netflix, right? They have billions of views globally. Banijay Group is a publicly traded company. It's one of the largest content production companies in the world. Beatport, which is something as a platform actually I use personally to download my music catalog. It's one of the world's largest music platforms. They have more than 40 million users, and then in terms of the artists, we have Imogen Heap and Disclosure, who are
Oh,
Grammy.
really? We're always early to crypto, so that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, exactly. They are also part of our advisory team. Um, and I think the reason why we've been able to form these partnerships, right, is firstly through our decades of experience working in, the music industry and forming those relationships. And also, the team that we've built as well. So, we have top executives and ex CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world, like Tidal, Sony, Circuit Group, who make up our advisory board. And so that gives us a huge edge in terms of distribution and actually onboarding and leveraging our infrastructure for some of the biggest brands and IPs in the world.
Amazing. Um, I used to work at Consensus at this point a long time ago, but there was an early initiative around music software with on crypto rails, and this was around 2017, so it might have just been too early, but it's so cool to see all of the pieces come together with something like core. That is like one of the first things that got me excited about crypto back in the day. So very, very cool to hear this. In terms of the competitive landscape, is the competition mostly just these kind of like centralized Web 2 alternatives like the software we've talked about, or is it truly like just manual work and like needing a manager and like needing like OpEx basically to patch some of these problems? Like what does that competition like matrix look like generally?
Yeah, look, I mean, look, there are many products available on the market, right, that attempt to solve, some of the problems that I've addressed, right? But the issue is they're all disconnected, they're all independent, and so we're the only protocol and infrastructure that is actually, connecting all of these applications, right, together in one ecosystem. Um, we're the only team that's actually going to leverage Base's, agentic payment infrastructure to actually scale, right, the routing, the verification, settlement of creative assets. And just fundamentally, we're, one of the only teams with the caliber of institutional relationships within music and television to actually onboard these IPs, right, for them to actually leverage our infrastructure.
I'm curious if you had a take on um, Netflix. I think this was a couple seasons ago with Black Mirror. Towards the end of one of their episodes, they had the viewer pick their ending, and I found that really interesting. I was working in crypto at the time, and I found it kind of a cool signal towards this path of ownership and composability. I'm curious if you know what episode this is and if you had any reactions to that. But a lot of what you talked about with having all these products under one kind of brand and vision reminds me of that, where you have all these different companies, they're all centralized in their own way and have their own incentive structure, but core kind of bringing it into one feels like a move towards that. Yeah, I'm curious if you have any reactions to that.
Yeah, I vaguely remember the episode you're talking about. I don't remember the name, but for us, I think one of the unique selling points for Core is the fact that we are building an entire ecosystem so that if you're an artist, right, if you're a creator, you don't need to spend hours searching, oh, how should I uh what's working for my brand, right? How can I reach that next level, or how can I create unique content, right? All of that can be done within the Core ecosystem.
Hmm. Um, on the agentic payments piece, does the way that agentic payments are leveraged in core look the same across these like 5 or 6 different apps you talked about, or are they kind of leveraged in different ways?
Yeah, I mean, I would say both. I mean, all of our applications, right? They all require compute costs, and so what that looks like is different for every application. But for example, obviously with Chorus, um, let's say you wanted to license or purchase a remix pack, right, from an artist, right? You could do that directly within, for example, even Claude, right? You could just chat with it and say, hey, like, use base MCP, help me remix a track, right? And the agents can do that for you autonomously. And then, with other applications, right? For example, with like Pacer or Streamline, the agents, they operate differently, right? We're essentially providing and giving the user, an entire range of intelligence and data for them to make informed decisions on, what they should be posting and how should they move forward with their content.
Got it. That makes sense. Um, one, this is kind of a tangent, but it goes into my next question. One thing that I tracked a little bit is the rise of like Michaela and like kind of AI artists. I don't know how big Michaela has gotten since I kind of was last following. Like she was in a few commercials, and that was more kind of an influencer arc. But I do know that there is this kind of trend um, of artists that aren't actually people. Is that something you're seeing in the space, just in your career as an artist now with AI? I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're seeing that, creep up a lot across, streaming platforms, across, YouTube, social media, right? You're seeing the age of the AI influencer and now the AI artist. There's a lot of divided opinions amongst artists
Oh,
and just the community in general, right? Some are strongly opposed to AI, right? Some are, very pro and future, you know, leaning. My position really is that I think whether you like it or not, AI is the future. It's going to impact the way that music is produced, the way that content is produced moving forward. And it's kind of similar to how, if you asked a instrumentalist, right, back in, I don't know, the 50s or the 60s, right, that there would be a technology which can sample their performance, right, and people would remix it, right, they'd pitch it down, pitch it up. I think those people would complain. They'd probably complain and say, hey, that's not music. You're just stealing my music, right? But
yeah,
that's called sampling, and people do that, and
yeah.
people love it, right? It's made some of the biggest tracks in the world, and so
Mm.
I think there's a mixture, I think, of fear, right, and uncertainty of what not knowing what the future is going to be. But I think it's really going to impact, music, and it's just going to be the next phase of music production and content creation.
I was watching a podcast with Diplo about this where he was talking
Yeah.
about AI and like his thoughts on it, and he had a very similar stance where he was just like, yeah, it's like it's kind of how the industry is already moving, and it's like it's I think it's actually helped him become more creative where he's now able to he's branching into like K-pop and like producing for BTS, and like these are skills that would have taken a really long time to hone into, but now with like the ability to remix and sample and like understand sound much more quickly, I think you can. I'm not an artist, but it sounds like you can get better range as an artist because of it. So that's really cool that you feel similarly.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I also think, a positive aspect of this is that um, you know, it's kind of got rid of the gatekeeping that you see a lot within
right.
music or right film, right? Because let's say, you're an aspiring, musician, or even you just want to, make music or content as a hobby, right? If you wanted a professional grade vocalist, right, in your track, you'd have to pay like upwards to hundreds or even maybe like thousands of dollars for a good vocal, right? And that's going to take time. That's going to take money. But with AI, you can actually create pretty high quality vocals, right? That you can use in your track. That wasn't available before AI, and so it's enabled a lot of like bedroom producers to elevate their music and giving them the tools to also succeed.
Very cool. Um, what does core look like in 5 years, and what's your personal vision for core's broader impact in the music industry?
Yeah, so Core will be the default clearinghouse for creative assets. Every label, agency, brand that deals in creative assets, they're going to run their discovery, their licensing, their settlement through our protocol. And so, as we've already been, onboarding some of the biggest IPs and artists, right, on Core, that's just going to continue. And we're going to scale our ecosystem. We're going to scale our applications even more and invite other people to build on Core as well. And so that's where I see the future for Core. I think it's really exciting, especially with the applications that we've built. They are extremely useful. I personally use them and have found them to be very beneficial for me as well, being an artist and a content creator. And as we lean towards this agentic future, this is going to be a requirement for people. So it's inevitable, and really excited to really contribute in this way.
Do you think there's a world in which, or like a vision for something like a versions plugin or a chorus plugin into something like Ableton? Like when I think of my workflow for sampling and mixing, I'm mostly working out of music software, of course, not professionally, but I could see something like being able to like remix right into Ableton as being something that's very cool, like with the chorus plugin. And so is there a vision of like being able to take your apps, create these plugins, and like put them into some of the traditional tools that people are using, or like what is that like ecosystem of integrations look like?
No, absolutely. I definitely foresee a future where, our goal is to make the experience for our users as frictionless as possible. And so, as you mentioned, there are, many plugins which you can use within Ableton or any other workstation that you use, right? And so I definitely see the value in that, right? In being able to, plug in, for example, a chorus within your workstation for you to just seamlessly, remix music, to swap stems in and out, kind of similar to what I forget the name. The majority of people, they get their samples from Splice. Sorry, that was the name, Splice.
Splice, yes, this is what I was.
Yes.
Yes, Splice was also what I wanted to ask you about. Yes, correct.
Yeah. So similar to that, right, where you can just swap in and out and insert different stems, right? So yeah, I definitely see a future in which we can integrate our applications within other programs.
Super cool. I mean, given that you already have the Beatport relationship and some of these
Yeah.
other ecosystem relationships, it just, to me, it sounds like such a natural evolution to what you're already building right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, Very cool. I'm so excited to be a personal user of Core myself, hearing kind of some of the preview of products that you're building. Any exciting announcements or things you can tease that are lined up through the end of the year?
Yeah. We have a very exciting pipeline lined up. The first one being Core ID. So yeah, we've already received a lot of signups already, and so you can expect to be able to mint your Core ID very soon, and that will enable you to explore all of our applications within our ecosystem. And we'll be launching Chorus, Pacer, Streamline for the public shortly as well, so you can have a play around with those. And then also we have some exclusive collaborations coming up with some of our current partners and a very successful artist in the
Mm.
Web3 space. So yeah, it's an exclusive collection that will come very soon. Can't reveal more than that for now. But I would say just overall, if you're already part of the community, then yeah, you can expect a lot of really exciting campaigns lined up. And yeah, just overall, I'm just super excited about what's to come within these next couple of months. So I hope everyone else is as well.
Amazing. Um, I have a few lightning questions about your music career, if you're cool
Okay.
going into that. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
How did you get into it? I mean, it's such an interesting journey to go from having an insane career as a DJ and an artist and then moving into crypto. So, like, how did that start?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm from London, and London has a very vibrant and a very rich scene when it comes to, like um, raves, festivals, of course, the music industry as well. Some of the biggest artists come from the UK, and so it really started when I was in university. I studied music when I was in university, and so that I was able to be exposed to that culture for the first time, and then just from there, I was DJing at my local club, and doing events for my university, and then from there just started taking an interest into music production, and then taking my DJing more seriously. For example, I was on the main stage lineup for Creamfields Asia last year, which included Skrillex, um, Yusuke Yukamatsu, who else? Some other Steve Angelo as well, which is
Mm.
really cool to see. My name alongside their names as well. Uh, and yeah, it takes a lot of time and balance, right, to juggle that with me focused on building core. But they kind of go hand in hand because I use the applications on that we've built on core personally. They've helped me a lot, and just from my experience uh, doing music production and trying to grow my brand organically, like I see the current struggles that people face. So yeah, I'm really fortunate to be in this position where I get to work on things that I'm genuinely passionate about.
Yeah, and what a combo. That's so cool. Um, Favorite house artist?
Favorite house artist? Yeah, do you know what? Now, recently, there's been a huge trend in minimal house. I feel, I grew up with
Oh,
tech house.
right, same.
Tech,
Yeah. What's minimal
yeah,
house?
yeah. Tech house was very strong between, like, I'd say, like, 2014 all the way until maybe 2020, and then I think post pandemic, we've seen this like emerging trend of like minimal house, right, and less of
Yeah.
a focus on big drops and more of a focus towards groove.
So like
And so,
Nicholas Jar and like those guys, or at least I'm looking on Spotify right now. That's yeah, okay. Interesting.
yeah, so I would say, my favorite artists before, obviously like John Summit, I think is a huge inspiration.
Sure.
He also, started uh, on online, right, like posting videos on YouTube. Um, and then James Hype as well. He's a really talented DJ, I think. And then now I like some of the minimal house DJs as well, like Prosper, Clune. Who else?
Cool.
Chris Darcy. So yeah, I think they're doing bits. And yeah, to be honest, I couldn't say I have a favorite, but I have a handful of artists that I draw inspiration from, and I go, wow, like they're making some great music.
Yeah, it feels like when the Skrillex era of music happened, there was so much of like the head banging, the womp womp style
Yeah,
techno, and then it's kind of changed now where it's so much more groovy. I think like I don't know, I think of like a lot of Peggy Gou's famous songs as like the kind of movement into that. Yeah, very cool. And then yeah, I was also just curious, like, what is your favorite way to sample? Like, what's your process?
Yeah, there's many different methods. Firstly, I'll just go through like all my different sample packs that I have and just, try and draw inspiration, right? Something that I think is catchy. I typically start with a vocal because I think fundamentally the vocal is the most important part of your track.
Mm.
Because it's going to shape what your bass line is going to sound like, right? And the key that you're going to be working on in, and then from there, adding different elements to complement the vocal. So I usually start with a vocal, and then from there, you know, work on the drums, and then try and create like a bass line melody to go along with that.
Mm.
That's, to be honest, the most like laborious part because
Yeah.
uh, it takes a lot of time, right? Just sifting through different samples. It can get very
Cool.
tiring. But then once you get out of that stage, then, the creative juices start flowing and then you just get locked in. So that's usually my process.
So cool. The artist I was taught mixing by suggested that I was like, I really don't have a background in music, but sampling is so much fun once you get into it. And she was suggesting like recording ambient noise from outside. Like I went on a trip to Italy with my family and caught a lot of interesting noises of like the boats and the people chatting and the kids laughing she was like, you got to listen back to it and hear how the sounds kind of meld together. And yeah, so always one of my favorite questions to ask artists when I meet them. Very very cool. Riddhi, thank you so much for the time today. I have learned so much about KOR and about you personally. This has been one of my favorite episodes. But anything to leave the viewers with? Where can people find you?
Yeah, firstly, thank you, DT, for hosting this. Appreciate it. You can find me on socials, so X at DJ Litty Ritty, which is my DJ name. Also Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Obviously, Core Protocol on X as well. So make sure to follow Core Protocol because yeah, we're going to be posting all of our announcements there. And then once again, if you're already part of the Core community or you're just hearing about Core for the first time, yeah, be excited because we have a lot to announce. With our partners, some exciting campaigns as well. And so yeah, it's a busy time for us, but super excited.
Thank you so much, Riddhi, for your time today, and we will catch you on socials.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks.